Hey guys, tonight we slip into worn sandals, feel the coarse sand beneath our toes, and step into a place where every breath might be your last. The brutal, chaotic world of a Roman gladiator. You're not watching the show tonight, you are the show. The torchlight flickers against cracked stone walls as you blink awake in a cell that smells like sweat, rusted iron, and yesterday's fear. No windows, just one barred door and a distant roar from above. The crowd is already gathering. You don't know who's fighting today, but it could be you. Maybe. You've lost track of time. You shift on your straw mat. It's damp. Of course it is. This whole place is underground, beneath the arena. The walls drip condensation, and rats scurry somewhere just out of reach. You flex your sore limbs. Training yesterday was brutal. Every part of you aches. Shoulders, thighs, ribs, even your eyebrows somehow. But that pain? It's a good sign. It means you're still alive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and the local time down in the comments. I always love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You weren't born for this life. Nobody really is. Unless you were one of the rare octorati citizens who volunteered for gladiator life in exchange for coin, glory, or just to escape debt. But nah, you were captured. Your memory's hazy. Was it a battlefield? A coastal raid? 1 minute, you were free. The next, shackled in a cart with 30 others, bumping along dusty roads toward Rome. You were stripped, inspected like livestock, and branded right on the thigh. That mark? It tells everyone you're property now, belonging to a lanista, the owner of a gladiator school. And now, you're down here, in one of the cells called carceres, beneath the Colosseum itself. The hypogym is a maze of corridors, pulleys, trapdoors, and cages for everything from lions to condemned men. Above you, 20,000 Romans laugh, bet, and sip watered wine, while vendors shout, roasted dormice, honeyed dates, fresh blood. Okay, maybe not the last one, but you wouldn't be surprised that this crowd comes for violence, not popcorn. And now the gate groans. Your trainer, a former gladiator himself, missing half an ear, shouts your name. No time to stretch, no time to pray. You grab your rudies, the wooden practice sword used in drills. It's not a real match, not yet. Today, it's just rehearsal. Probably, maybe. Depends on the mood of the crowd and the emperor's appetite for spectacle. You're herded into the prep chamber. Other gladiators stand with you, some murmuring, some silent, others psyching themselves up with sharp, rhythmic breaths. One guy's even humming. His eye twitches. You decide not to make eye contact. Your armour clinks with every step. It's mismatched, second-hand scraps from men who didn't need it anymore. The Galea, your helmet, rests heavy on your shoulders. Your vision's reduced to a narrow slit, and your breathing echoes weirdly inside the metal. If you've got claustrophobia, tough luck. Then the floor trembles. A wooden platform beneath you creaks upward, powered by an intricate system of pulleys and slaves. You're rising up, into the light. Your stomach tightens, and then, bam, you burst into sunlight so blinding it slaps your retinas. The roar of the crowd hits you like a fist. You squint. Sand, so much sand, and walls, towering and circular, ringed with Romans craning their necks to get a better look at your probable demise. Some cheer, others boo. A few throw bread crusts. One guy flashes you an encouraging thumbs up. You're not sure if it means good luck or I bet money on your death. Across from you, your sparring partner stands ready. He's taller, older, his armour fits better, and his smirk, pure intimidation tactic. You step forward, knees wobbly, mouth dry, palms slick inside your grip. Then it begins. You charge, or maybe you dodge, depending on your mood and muscle memory. Your swords clash with a satisfying clang. The crowd roars again. You slip in the sand, recover, block a swing that would have cracked your ribs. Somewhere in your mind, you recall what your doctor drilled into you. Fight like it's real, every time, because one day it will be. Quirky tidbit: Roman spectators used to bet on not just who would win, but how long the fight would take. There were actual betting boards hung outside the arena, like sports bars predicting halftime scores. You're doing well, better than you expected. You land a solid hit. It's practice, sure, but you see respect flicker in your opponent's eyes. He nods once, Gladiator code for not bad, rookie. But as you catch your breath between clashes, you wonder something historians still argue about. Did gladiators really fight to the death every time? Evidence suggests most matches didn't end in fatality. These fighters were too valuable to waste. But sometimes the mob demanded blood. And if the emperor gave the signal, well, you end the match on your feet, weapon lowered, sweat pouring down your face. The crowd applauds, half-heartedly. But hey, it's better than booze. You're led back underground. You don't know when you'll fight again. Tomorrow, next week, in a staged naval battle complete with crocodiles and floating platforms? Yes, that actually happened once. Probably not this week, though. Back in your cell, you slump onto your mat. You're breathing hard, muscles humming with adrenaline, but you survived the arena. For now. You close your eyes, rats squeak nearby, and above, the muffled sound of another match begins. Someone else's turn. Sleep tight. You don't remember being captured. That part always stays fuzzy, like your brain's trying to do you a solid and block it out. But you know you weren't born in Rome. Your accent gives it away, even when you try to fake the Latin. Maybe you were from Gaul, maybe Thrace. You had a home once, fields, goats, family, but all that feels like a past life. Now, you're just another damned Tus, a condemned soul. There were lots of ways to land in this mess. You could have been a rebellious slave, caught running from your master, or rising up in one of those uprisings the Senate pretends never happened. Or maybe you were a pirate, or a bandit, or just the poor guy standing next to someone more important when a legion rolled through. Rome had a talent for repurposing misfortune. They called it justice. You call it bad luck. The moment that truly sealed your fate, that first auction, you were hauled out onto a wooden platform, naked, with a number on your chest. A Roman nobleman squinted at your arms, poked your thighs, checked your teeth like you were a prize mule. You tried to protest, but your Latin was garbled and your guards didn't care. The man who bought you, your lanista, laughed like he'd gotten a good deal. "This one has fight in him," he muttered. Or at least rage. Lucky you. You weren't even bought for farming or housework. You were bought for spectacle. You arrived at the ludus after 2 days on a cramped wagon, shackled with others. Some sobbed. Some raged. One man prayed to 20 different gods, just to be safe. You'd learn later that most didn't survive a year. The ludus itself looked more like a prison than a school. High stone walls, guards at every corner, barred windows, and doors that locked from the outside. This was no playful boot camp. This was a factory that turned terrified men into weapons. At the gates you saw the sign, Ludus Magnus, the great gladiator school near the Colosseum. It wasn't the only one in Rome. There were others, but this one was elite. As elite as a meat grinder can be anyway. Inside, you were stripped again. Seriously, it's like Romans were allergic to letting people wear clothes, and handed your first uniform. A rough tunic, sandals, and a belt that itched like it was made of fire ants. You stood in a line while a scribe wrote your name, or what passed for it, into a wax tablet. If you didn't have one, congrats. You just got assigned a new one. That was also the day you met your doctor. He was a mountain of a man, with arms like tree trunks, and a nose that had been broken more times than you've blinked this week. His voice? Gravel dipped in vinegar. "Welcome, recruits," he said. "You're all dead already, but if you fight well enough, you might just get to live a little longer." Motivational, right? He wasn't joking. One recruit, a scrawny kid from Egypt, snorted at the speech. The doctor slammed the kid to the ground in a single move and barked, "Rule 1, silence when I speak." The rest of you didn't need a second lesson. You were marched past the training yard, a huge rectangle of packed dirt and sand, with rows of wooden practice dummies, racks of weapons, and a handful of men already sparring. One had a fresh bandage on his thigh, another was limping. No one smiled. They were veteran gladiators. They'd survived long enough to teach, taunt, or torment the new meat. You'd be meeting them soon enough. That night, you got your first meal. It was a surprise, a strange mash of barley porridge, beans, and dried fruit. Not bad, actually. Gladiators were fed better than most slaves. You needed strength. A lean, wiry corpse doesn't put on a good show. You found your bunk in a shared dorm. 10 to a room, straw mattresses, one bucket for, well, everything. Cozy. The guy snoring next to you smelled like he hadn't bathed since the Republic. You didn't sleep much. Too many sounds. Coughing, groaning, whispers, the occasional scream. A few cells down, someone was crying, or laughing. You weren't sure which was worse. Here's your quirky tidbit. Romans believed that the gods favoured gladiators, especially the ones who died well. So sometimes priests would examine a dead fighter's body for divine signs. One guy even claimed he saw a god in the steam rising from a fallen gladiator's blood. Spoiler, he was probably also drinking the arena wine. But you're not dead yet. The next morning, before the sun even stretched across the rooftops, the doctor kicked open your door and shouted, "Up, worms!" You learned fast. You had to. The days were a blur of drills, weapons training, body conditioning, and learning Latin insults. You'd soon hear shouted from thousands of mouths. And somewhere in between getting bruised, shouted at, and nearly knocked unconscious with a wooden shield, you realised something chilling. You were changing. This life was moulding you. You no longer flinched at pain. You barely noticed the smell. And your dreams, when they came, were filled with sand, steel, and crowds. Some historians still argue whether all gladiators were forced into this life, or whether some found pride in it. You get it now. Not pride exactly, but clarity. When you're this close to death every day, the rest of life fades away. You know exactly who you are. A man with a weapon, a number, and a job to survive. And for now, you're doing just that. You're standing on a wooden block in the midday sun, completely naked. Again. At this point, you're starting to think Romans have a vendetta against clothing. The heat bakes your scalp, and the auctioneer's voice drones in the background, calling out your stats like you're a particularly grumpy ox. Height, weight, age, muscle tone, any scars. They're all announced to a crowd of men clutching wax tablets and purses fat with coins. You're not being admired. You're being appraised, measured, valued, sold. A lanista named Gaius Claudius raises his stylus. The bid is accepted. A few coins jingle. Just like that, you're his. Gaius doesn't look like much. Thin, balding, with eyes like boiled olives. But everyone steps out of his way, even the guards. His robe is trimmed with purple. Subtle, but expensive. That colour's basically the ancient Roman equivalent of a Rolex. He doesn't speak to you directly. He snaps his fingers, and 2 assistants throw you a tunic and shackle you with the others he just bought. Apparently, you're now part of his latest shipment. Fresh meat for the ludus Gaius, one assistant grins. You'll either be dead in a month or drinking wine with senators in a year. Honestly, you're hoping for a third option. You're hauled through the streets of Rome, a little parade of future combatants, past bathhouses, temples, and children throwing figs at your head. The city stinks of urine and ambition. It pulses with noise, colour, and marble. You hear cheers in the distance. Someone's fighting in the Colosseum again. Lucky them, or not. Your journey ends at the ludus, an enclosed compound with high sandstone walls. topped with tiles so sharp even a cat would think twice. Inside, it's a mix of barracks, training grounds, kitchens, and a surprisingly decent garden. Gladiators need calories, after all. The first thing Gaius does is line you all up in the atrium. Then the real inspection begins. You're poked, prodded, measured again. This time, by a trainer with arms like barrels and a permanent scowl. His name's Marcellus, and you'll grow to either hate or deeply respect him. Possibly both. He pulls your arm up, checks your reach. Medium height, balanced stance, good legs. He nods to Gaius. Could be a murmillo. A murmillo, you ask? Marcellus grunts. Heavy class, big shield, short sword. You'll sweat buckets and move like a turtle, but you'll last longer. Lucky you, Gaius chuckles. He's got good eyes. He won't be a blind charge type. And there's a hierarchy even among fighters. The murmillo is bulky, slow, and relies on endurance. Others might become a retiarius, lightly armoured, armed with a net and trident, fighting more like a dancer than a soldier. Or a secutor, designed specifically to hunt those net throwers down. You'll learn the categories soon enough. For now, you'll march to the barracks and given a wooden tag with your new name, whatever Gaius decides to call you. You try to argue, that gets you nowhere. Quirky fact time. Some gladiators were named after myths, Achilles, Hercules, even Minotaur, so the crowd could enjoy the illusion of watching legends reborn. You, however, are now Felix. It means lucky. Let's hope it sticks. Inside your quarters you meet your bunkmates, 4 of them. One, a grizzled German named Wolfram, offers you half a fig. That's about as close to a hug as you're getting here. You knew, he asks, voice thick with accent. Just arrived, Atway, you reply. He nods. You scream at night, they beat you. You snore too loud, I beat you. Duly noted. The next few days pass in a haze. You get fitted for practice armour. Leather straps dig into your skin. Your training weapon, a heavy wooden sword, feels like a club. You swing it once and nearly knock yourself off balance. There's also paperwork. Well, the Roman version of it. Scribes record your details on tablets. You're officially property now. Again. And that's when you discover something wild. You're worth money. Not just the coin Gaius paid for you, but potential. Your odds of survival, fighting style, appeal to the crowd. They're all calculated. Gladiators are investments. Walking, sweating, occasionally bleeding stocks. Some people even buy into your future, like racehorses. There's a man in a toga who visits the ludus weekly, just to check on his bets. You overhear him say, if Felix wins twice, I'll double my stake. If he dies, well, it's Rome. Historians still debate how common these kinds of sponsorships were, but plenty of inscriptions show gladiators had backers, wealthy fans who'd wager fortunes on their favourite killer. You don't know if that's flattering or terrifying. There's a branding ceremony next. Not the kind with hot irons, though you've seen those too, but ink and blade. You kneel while a tattooist carves your ID number into your skin. It hurts more than you'd expect. This number? It tells the guards you're trained, dangerous, an asset. Wolfram shows you his, LGM-29, Ludus Gaius Magnus, fighter number 29. He's had it for 3 years. That's basically ancient in gladiator terms. Later, Gaius gives a speech in the training yard. You are now gladiatores. You serve your ludus, your brothers in arms, and Rome. You fight to entertain, to survive, to rise, and maybe, one day, to earn your freedom. He holds up a wooden sword, smooth, polished, symbolic. This is a rudis. It's not sharp, but it means you fought enough, survived enough, earned enough glory to be free. Until then, train, fight, win. You stare at that sword longer than you should. You wonder how many ever get to hold one? The first time you hear the term disciplina, you think it means discipline, like punishment. You're not entirely wrong, but in the ludus, it's a whole lifestyle. Every day now begins before the sun even hits the rooftops. A horn blares, you groan. Marcellus kicks the door open, again. Up worms, he barks. Again, it's his thing. Maybe he just likes worms. Maybe you'll ask him one day, when you feel like dying. Your bones ache before you even stand. You slept weird and now your neck feels like it got into a bar fight with your pillow and lost. Still, you yank on your tunic, splash a bit of cold water on your face from a cracked ceramic basin, and line up in the yard with the others. The routine never changes. It's always in this order, like a sacred Roman ritual of self-destruction. Warm up. Laps around the yard. If you lag, you run extra. If you trip, you run extra. If you sneeze, someone says you look weak and you run extra. Drills, footwork, dodging, rolls, lunges, stance resets, all repeated until your legs are jelly and your brain starts narrating in ancient Latin, which is extra weird because you barely speak it. Weapons practice. You use a rudis, a wooden sword twice the weight of the real thing. Why? So the real one feels like a feather when it counts, except it doesn't. It still feels like holding a brick on a stick. You train with dummies made of thick wood, reinforced with iron bands. They don't move. They don't scream. But your knuckles sure do. Sparring, this is where things get spicy. They pair you with another recruit, sometimes evenly matched, sometimes very much not. You lose track of how many bruises you rack up, but you start naming them like pets. That one on your hip? He's Greg. Marcellus walks among you like a Roman hawk, arms crossed, calling out corrections. Foot back, Felix. You're not squashing grapes. Shield higher, Cassius. You want a trident in your neck. Gnaeus, stop crying. You haven't even been hit yet. By noon, you've sweated out your breakfast and your dignity, and you're only halfway done. You collapse on a bench in the shade. Wolfram joins you, already gnawing on a fig like he owns the world. First week's the worst, he mutters. Then it gets consistent. You mean better? He shakes his head. Number just predictable. Lunch is surprisingly filling. Gladiators are on what modern fitness influencers might call a high-carb, high-protein, iron-fortified ancient keto-Mediterranean bulk plan. Lots of beans, barley, veggies, dried fruit, occasionally meat, though it's more mystery animal than filet mignon. You eat fast, not because you're in a rush, but because, if you don't, the guy next to you might assume you're done and steal your date roll. After lunch comes Lectio Armorum, weapons class. They line up racks of gladi, tridents, nets, spears, and even scissor-bladed gauntlets, called scissores. You try them all, but your body reacts best to the Mamillo combo, gladius and scutum, sword and big ol' rectangular shield. Like Marcellus said, slow but survivable. Then there's the helmet, the galea. Yours is iron, heavy, and closes over your face like a metal frown. The slit for your eyes makes everything feel narrow, like you're living in a letterbox. It's hot, it's itchy, it's like fighting inside an angry oven. Still you learn, slowly. You memorize angles, timing, opponent tendencies. Marcellus is fond of saying, gladiator fights aren't just strength, they're theatre, they're chess with swords. Quirky historical tidbit. Trainers sometimes tied coloured feathers to different body parts of trainees, left leg, right arm, chest. Then they'd yell out which one you were supposed to attack. If you got it wrong, the feathered guy would hit you really hard. Educational in its own way. By the end of week 1, you've lost 6 pounds, gained 9 new scars, and started talking to your own shield like it's a close friend. One night, you hear Marcellus muttering to Gaius during inspection. Felix might survive. He listens. Gaius raises an eyebrow. Just don't let him get cocky. You pretend to be asleep, but inside you glow a little. Compliments are rarer than clean socks around here. But even as your body adapts, your mind flickers with doubts. You miss quiet. You miss your language. You miss not constantly thinking about ways you could be maimed in front of 50,000 people. Historians still debate how much downtime gladiators actually had. Some say they were practically monks between fights. No women, no alcohol, strict routines. Others think they were pampered athletes, with massages, fans and applause wherever they went. The truth, Probably somewhere in between. You've yet to see a fan, unless you count the guy fanning the cooking fire with a piece of goat leather. You start forming rhythms. Your body knows when to duck. Your wrist flicks naturally now, aiming for that exposed shoulder gap. Your feet learn the gritty texture of the sand. The wooden sword becomes an extension of you. You stop noticing the bruises, unless they're shaped like something funny, like that one that totally looks like a dolphin. And despite the pain, the blood, the total lack of personal space, something odd happens. You feel stronger, more focused, alive. For the first time in what feels like forever, you're not just surviving, you're becoming something. Not a slave, not a victim, but something sharp, unyielding, worth watching. Tomorrow you'll spar again. Tomorrow you might lose a tooth. But tonight, you sleep hard and dream of crowds. You know what they say, a gladiator is only as good as his gear. Okay, maybe nobody actually said that, but they should have. Because today, you're getting fitted with your first real weapons. Not the blunted, overused wooden sticks you've been sweating over all week, but the real thing. Cold iron, leather straps, steel edges, the tools that decide whether you go back to your bunk or get scraped off the sand with a shovel. The armamentarium, the armoury, is an echoing iron-scented hall lined with racks of weapons and armour sorted by type, weight and wear. Everything's a little mismatched, which is charming in a battle-ready garage sale kind of way. You see cracked helmets beside fresh-forged ones, shields with scratches that tell long stories, swords with hilts polished from use. Marcellus grunts as he tosses a gladius into your arms. Standard Roman short sword, he says. Double-edged, meant for stabbing, not swinging. You give it a test swing anyway. It's heavier than you expected, and the balance feels odd. Not like your wooden one, not yet. But you'll get there. Then comes the scutum, your large rectangular shield. It's like holding a door strapped to your arm. Not exactly graceful, but incredibly satisfying to shove into someone's chest. Your inner turtle is ready. Shield first, sword second, Marcellus says. A dead man, with perfect form, is still dead. They measure your arm for armour, just the right forearm, oddly enough. You ask why not both. Because your left's already behind a wall, Wolfram mutters, nodding toward your massive shield. They're not wasting metal on symmetry. Some guys get different setups. The Retiari wear almost nothing. Just a shoulder guard, arm net, and a trident that looks like it came straight from Poseidon's garage. They fight quick, dodgy, flashy. The Secatoras are their foil, heavy shields, rounded helmets with tiny eye holes, designed for chasing them down in sweaty, awkward glory. You're sticking with the Murmillo class. Solid, strong, still mobile enough to dodge, but you've got the kind of build that screams block first, stab later. Plus, Murmillos get the coolest looking helmets, crested like a fish, with stylized grills over the face that make you look like a terrifying, slightly angry mailbox. Quirky tidbit. Some gladiator helmets had built-in whistles so their breathing could be heard by the crowd. Others had intricate animal engravings, wolves, eagles, even sea monsters. Yours? It's got a dent in the forehead and a faint etching of what might be a chicken. You don't ask questions. Then comes test pairing. You try out different combinations of armour and weaponry against others until the doctors find your sweet spot. You spar around with a guy wielding a net, and it's awful. You trip, get tangled, and nearly lose your helmet to a well-aimed jab. You fight like a goat trying to swim, the trainer. Sighs, thanks. Appreciate the feedback. Finally, they settle on your official setup. Gladius, scutum, heavy belt, shin guards, a single arm guard, and your glorious, slightly chicken-etched helmet. It's not glamorous, but it feels right. Balanced. You start practicing with it immediately, jogging in circles, adjusting to the weight. Marcellus watches from a bench, munching olives. You'll either break it in or it'll break you in. You take that as encouragement. The next drill is reflex training. You and a line of other new gladiators stand while padded weights swing toward your faces on ropes. The idea is to dodge without flinching. Shield up, sword ready. It's not just for survival, it's for style. Remember, this is Rome. Everything's a show. A gladiator who fights well and dies ugly? Forgettable. But a fighter who parries like a dancer and bleeds with drama? That's a superstar. You overhear Gaius talking to another lanista by the gate later that afternoon. This one here, Felix, moves well. Got a good block, might make a decent verso. What's a verso? You ask Wolfram. Means you can be paired with anyone. Flexible style. Good for shows with surprise twists. Surprise twists? He shrugs. Sometimes they change the fight midway. Add a second opponent. Throw in a tiger. A tiger? He just smiles and walks away. You start practicing kill moves, as in theatrical finishing strikes. Yes, seriously. Marcellus even has a list. Upward stab through the ribs, slash across the throat, angled for blood spray, and the classic decapitation. Though that one's mostly for crowd-pleasing finales. You ask if people really cheer for that stuff. Oh yeah, he says. They'll boo if you stab too fast. They came for drama. Historians still argue whether the fights were choreographed like wrestling or genuinely unpredictable. Some scholars say they were rehearsed, others think spontaneity made them more thrilling. From your perspective, the pain feels real. The blood on the sand isn't raspberry jam. Later that week, you're allowed to carry your gear to the yard unsupervised. A big step. You're officially considered match ready, at least for a minor bout. As you polish your gladius, scented with oil and your own nervous fingerprints, you notice something weird. A tiny notch near the base. Someone else used this weapon before you. Someone else bled with it, maybe died with it. You feel a strange kinship with that unknown hand. Not sadness exactly, just awareness. This life isn't yours alone. That night, as you sit under the small square of moonlight your window allows, you can hear the creak of other gladiators practicing into the dark. Some whisper, some mutter to their gods. One guy is definitely singing to his armour. You hold your gladius across your knees and wonder what it would feel like to win. Not just survive, but win. To hear the roar of the crowd. To feel the Emperor's eyes on you. To stand tall while someone else lies in the sand. You're not sure if that dream is yours, or if it's been baked into you by weeks of conditioning and blood-soaked applause. Either way, you don't let go of the sword. The sun barely crests the rooftops, and already the yard smells like sweat, iron, and impending regrets. Today's training starts earlier than usual. Marcellus storms in with the energy of a man who's had 2 cups of vinegar and just found out his chariot got keyed. Armour on. Now it's trial day, he growls. Trial day? You exchange glances with Wolfram, who just shrugs and says, Good luck, Felix. Try not to die in rehearsal. Encouraging. You gear up. Gladius, scutum, arm guard and helmet, and follow the others out into the yard. The sand's been freshly raked. Blood stains from yesterday's practice are half covered, but not forgotten. The dummies have been pushed aside. In their place, a lineup of your fellow trainees facing off in pairs. Marcellus shouts, Today we see who can actually fight, and who's just pretending to hold a sword. Lose your stance, lose your dignity, and possibly your spleen. You're paired with a thick-necked brute named Bassus. He's from the eastern provinces, strong as an ox, and just as graceful. You've sparred with him before. His idea of defence is to yell loudly and hit harder. You square off. Feet firm, shield up, gladius ready. The fight begins fast. Bassus charges like a rhino with somewhere to be. You sidestep barely. He stumbles. You jab your shield forward, catch him in the ribs. He grunts, swings wide, and you duck under it, coming up inside his guard. For a moment, you see it, an opening near his armpit. In a real fight, you'd strike. Instead, you slap your blade flat against the spot. The crowd of trainers murmurs. Marcellus snorts. Not bad, Felix. You might actually not embarrass us. You smile under your helmet. The rest of the morning is more of the same. Round after round of test matches, each more exhausting than the last. The sun climbs, the sweat pours. Your arms feel like boiled noodles. But something's changed. You're not flailing anymore. You're anticipating, reading weight shifts, timing your attacks, even countering feints. You're becoming dangerous. But the ludus isn't just about swinging swords. No. There's conditioning too, Roman style. That means carrying heavy stones across the yard, rope climbing with a shield strapped to your back, and the ever-dreaded running with sandbags in full armour, which is basically Rome's answer to CrossFit, minus the Instagram selfies. You collapse by a wall after one brutal lap, chest heaving, heart pounding in your ears. Across the yard, Bassus is throwing up in a bush. Even the veterans look tired. You glance up. Marcellus is watching you. He doesn't say a word, just nods once and walks away. Progress. During water breaks, you learn another bit of gladiator etiquette. Don't drink too fast. One guy gulps his whole cup and pukes immediately. Marcellus just says, "Rookie mistake," and walks over him like he's a training dummy. Lunch is silent. Everyone's too tired to talk. You chew your barley stew slowly, feeling the way your muscles twitch under the strain. It's a weird kind of satisfaction, like your body's learning new rules. You're not just building strength, you're learning how to endure, how to suffer correctly. Quirky fact time. Some Roman doctors specialised in gladiator care. They were called medici, and they treated fighters like athletes. Broken bones were set, cuts sewn with clean linen. There was even a specific balm made from boiled fig leaves and vinegar, allegedly great for bruises. Smelled like pickled sadness, though. Afternoons are for technique drills. You line up and repeat the same combo 20 times. Block, lunge, pivot, strike. Again and again. Your forearms ache. Your calves burn. Marcellus strolls past with a stick and taps anyone who slows down. You get tapped. Twice. More hips, Felix. You're not churning butter. By the end of the drill, your tunic is soaked. Your shield feels heavier than a waterlogged ox. And your sword hand is numb. And still, it's not over. Evenings are for mock scenarios. One day, it's a free-for-all brawl. 6 fighters in a sandpit. Last one standing wins. The next day, it's protect the emperor. You have to keep a wooden dummy alive while others try to destroy it. Spoiler, the dummy never makes it. But the wildest session comes when Gaius orders a surprise lesson. You line up, expecting drills, only to be herded into a dark room under the yard. It's filled with caged animals, bears, wolves, even a lion, all sleepy, all behind thick bars. This, he says, gesturing broadly, is what you might face. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not ever, but the arena is unpredictable. You stare at the lion. It yawns. You swear it winks at you. Historians still argue whether gladiators were routinely pitted against animals. Some sources say yes. Others claim that was the job of venatores, specialists in animal combat. You're hoping the scholars arguing it are right about the separation. Still, seeing the lion up close rewires something in your brain. You realise, fully, how little your survival depends on just skill. There's randomness here, chaos, a tooth in the wrong place, and your glory means nothing. That night, after scrubbing the sand off your skin and limping back to your bunk, you lie awake staring at the ceiling. You think about Bassus, about the lion, about the tiny notch in your gladius. You're exhausted, hungry for rest. But beneath it, there's something deeper now. Readiness. You're not just a prisoner anymore. You're not a slave who trains. You're a gladiator who might actually stand a chance. Tomorrow, you'll train harder. And maybe, just maybe, you'll make it to the real arena alive. You're halfway through your morning drills, gladius in hand, sweat stinging your eyes, sand grinding in your boots. When the doctor calls a break, you slump against the stone wall, grateful for the pause and the shade it offers. Then a shadow blocks your light. Wolfram plops down beside you with a grunt. "Congratulations," he says, deadpan. "You survived a week. That makes you one of the lucky ones." You smirk. Only took 17 bruises, 1 black eye, and the loss of a toenail. He nods. The toenail's the worst. Never trust a boot in this place. This, oddly, is bonding. Over the next few days, you start getting to know the other gladiators. Not just their fighting styles, but the people inside the armour. They're a mixed bunch, a patchwork of accents, tempers and stories. Some came from noble families gone bankrupt. Others were captured in war. A few, though you still don't understand why, actually volunteered, like Tiro. He's barely 20, wiry, fast, always smiling like he knows a joke the rest of you don't. He claims he was a baker's son from Capua who signed up because kneading dough was too soft on my hands. You think he's either very brave or very, very stupid. Then there's Drusa. Yes, she's a gladiator, a gladiatrix. You didn't even know women fought in the arena until she took down 3 trainees in a row, using only a spear, and what looks like pure spite. Quirky historical tidbit. Female gladiators weren't common, but they did exist. Emperor Domitian was especially fond of pairing them against dwarves or exotic animals for crowd amusement. Classy. Women weren't technically banned from the games until 200 CE. So yes, Drusa is legit. You cross paths with her once in sparring. She ducks your first swing, slams the hilt of her spear into your gut, and smirks as you crumple. Don't assume softness, she says. It gets you killed. You make a mental note never to assume anything again. Other faces become familiar too. There's Castor, the scarred veteran with one eye who rarely speaks, but whose swordplay is surgical. When he trains, the yard falls quiet. Even Marcellus watches him like a fan at a chariot race. There's Spurius, loud and proud, who insists he once bested a lion in a single strike. Historians would debate this one, if they cared. And there's the twins, Nerva and Nonius, identical Gauls who fight like mirrored wolves, always in sync, always muttering in a language no one else understands. Friendships in the ludus are strange things. You might joke, eat, even share stories, but trust? That's rare, because any one of these men or women could end up across the arena from you, could be your opponent in a staged battle, could be ordered to fight you for real. Wolfram puts it best one evening, as you both scrub your gear by torchlight. They're not your brothers, he says. They're your competition. Gladiators don't grow old. They die, or they earn freedom, and there's not enough rudies to go around. Still, there's camaraderie. After all, who else can understand what it's like to live beneath the sand, to train until your arms don't work, to dream of freedom but wake up to chains? One night, Gaius hosts a rare feast in the yard. Some kind of festival, you don't catch the name. There's roasted meat, sweet wine, even musicians. The mood lightens, jokes are shared. A couple of the older gladiators reenact one of their famous matches with wooden spoons and melon rinds. It's ridiculous. It's perfect. You laugh so hard you nearly forget where you are. And then you remember. Because during dessert, honeyed figs and barley cakes, Gaius claps loudly. Tomorrow, he announces, 3 of you will be chosen for the Venatio opening act, a warm-up for the crowd. Nothing deadly, unless you trip on a goat or annoy the wrong senator. The yard goes quiet. Everyone pretends to keep eating, but the air's electric. You don't know whether to hope you're picked or not. On the one hand, it's your first chance to step into the Colosseum. On the other, you could become the punchline of an opening act. Historians still argue whether warm-up matches were strictly theatrical or carried real risk. Many agree that mock fights often turned deadly if the crowd got bored, or if the emperor raised an eyebrow at the wrong moment. You lie awake that night, staring at the ceiling again. You think of Drusa's smirk, of Castor's silent focus, of Wolfram's warning. You think of how many of these people you might one day have to face, not in training, but in front of tens of thousands of screaming Romans. No practice, no second chances. In the ludus, your life is measured in victories, your friendships measured in breaths, and your value measured in how loudly the crowd screams your name. You wake to the smell of smoke and lentils. Breakfast, apparently. Not bad, not great, just there. You eat it fast, scooping the mush with a scrap of old bread, and wash it down with watered wine that tastes like someone whispered grapes at a bucket of vinegar. But it does the job. Then you trudge to the latrine trench behind the training yard, where your sandals sink into something you hope is just wet sand. Welcome to the less glamorous side of gladiator life. Despite what the mosaics might suggest, the day-to-day of a gladiator isn't all roaring crowds and heroic poses. It's repetition. It's routine. And honestly, it's kind of gross. First, let's talk food. You eat a lot, like a lot. Gladiators need energy, and Rome delivers. You're on what they call the gladiator diet, a high-carb feast of barley, legumes, and sometimes fruit. Meat shows up, but rarely. Eggs, occasionally. Wine, always watered down, which doesn't stop some guys from pretending it's vintage. Historians actually found evidence of this diet from bones discovered near gladiator cemeteries. Turns out you're pretty much a walking pot of barley stew. That's why they called gladiators hordiari, barley men. But nutrition's only half the story. You live, eat, sleep, and sweat in close quarters with dozens of other fighters, and no amount of fig-scented oil is going to cover up that smell. Bathing happens once a week, maybe twice if Gaius is feeling generous. There's a large communal bath at the back of the compound, and when you finally step into that warm, cloudy water, it's like being hugged by a mildly unsanitary cloud. Soap? Not quite. You use olive oil, smear it all over your body, then scrape it off with a strigil, a curved metal tool that collects dirt, oil, and shame. The first time you try it, it feels weird. The third time, it feels essential. By the fifth, you're chasing down your turn with the good strigil like your life depends on it. There's a rhythm to your days. You train, you eat, you collapse. Somewhere in between, you try not to think too hard about the future. But at night, the barracks hum with whispers, snores, the occasional nightmare, and, of course, flatulence that could double as a war crime. Quirky tidbit. Gladiators were weirdly popular with women, especially Roman noblewomen. Some even paid to sneak into the ludus just to watch you train. There are love notes scratched into the walls from fans offering, well, let's just say, gifts. One woman reportedly bribed a lanista to spend time with her favourite fighter. You're not sure whether to be flattered or terrified. Probably both. That popularity means certain fighters get perks. Not freedom, not safety, but privileges. Extra food, better equipment, silk-lined tunics. You start noticing who's favoured. Castor always gets the fresher olives. Tiro somehow always has a dry tunic. And then there's the weird fan stuff. Gaius starts letting a few paying spectators into the yard during sparring matches. Rich Romans sipping watered wine from silver cups, watching you sweat like it's dinner theatre. You overhear one say, "That one, Felix, look at his footwork. He reminds me of that Iberian I bet on last year." You've officially become a conversation topic for Rome's elite. Still, you don't get soft, because your bed's still straw, your armour still chafes, and every time you eat a date, it has sand in it. Every time. One evening, Wolfram teaches you the art of quiet survival. Always clean your weapon. Don't argue with Marcellus. Don't fall for fans. And never ever try to fake an injury. You raise an eyebrow. Why not? He lifts his tunic, revealing a puckered scar on his thigh. Because if they catch you pretending, they'll give you something real to whine about. Noted. Still, injuries happen. Blisters become sores. Bruises turn purple, then black, then fade into mottled reminders. One guy breaks his toe during a shield drill. Another gets a tooth knocked out and proudly strings it into a necklace. You're not sure if it's lucky or just unsanitary. There's a medicus on site, an older man with trembling hands and the permanent smell of mint and copper. He doesn't ask questions. He just smears weird pastes onto wounds, and mutters phrases like, "You'll either heal or you won't." Comforting. You also learn to sleep through anything. Thunder? Fine. Drusa sharpening her spear in the corner? Sure. Barsus snoring like a dying cow? Normal. You'd be surprised what the human brain can adapt to when it's exhausted enough. And through it all you begin to change. You can feel your body hardening, your instincts sharpening. You know the yard like the back of your calloused hand. You know who to avoid when they're in a bad mood. You know which helmet has the cracked nose guard and which shield smells weird. You know how to breathe through pain, how to fight through it. Historians still argue whether gladiators were truly slaves in the traditional sense. Yes, most were owned, branded, trained, but there's something different here, something deeper. You're not a chained prisoner. You're a trained killer. You're an investment. You matter, at least until you don't. And that's the paradox. You live better than most Roman labourers. You eat more, train more, maybe even feel stronger. But every moment is a countdown. Every week might bring your name onto the board. Every night could be your last in that scratchy straw bed. So you adjust. You polish your sword before bed. You rub vinegar on your bruises. You sleep with one eye open. And when you dream of roaring crowds, of raised shields, of the taste of freedom, just out of reach. But most of all, you dream of surviving long enough to see what comes next. They wake you early, earlier than usual, which is saying something. The stars are still out, and the torches along the courtyard walls flicker like nervous sentries. You're pulled from your scratchy mat by the thud, thud, thud of boots, and Marcellus barking orders, like a man whose coffee was replaced with raw fury. Out! Yard! Full gear! No breakfast, no stretch, just armour and confusion. You don your tunic, strap on your scutum, and barely manage to tighten the chin strap of your helmet before the doors are flung open, and you're herded into the yard. It's still dark, and you can see your breath in the air. Around you, other gladiators shuffle forward, some wide-eyed, others resigned. A few veterans wear faint smirks like they've seen this trick before. At the centre of the yard stands Gaius, holding something in his hand. It's a branding iron. You stop in your tracks. Wolfram leans over, voice low. Initiation. It's how they mark you as part of the Brotherhood. You frown. I thought we were already marked, he shrugs. That was property. This is loyalty. Big difference. They line you up, 10 of you, all relatively new, all with the same cautious expression that says, "Please don't let this be what I think it is." The medicus approaches first, holding a pot of black ink and a sharp bone needle. Ah, okay. Not a hot iron. Still not great. One by one he tattoos a symbol on your upper arm. A stylized gladius crossed with a laurel branch. It stings. Not the worst pain you've felt lately, but it's personal in a way the other wounds haven't been. This one you'll carry until your last breath. Gaius stands before the group, arms crossed. Now you wear the mark of the Familia Gladiatoria. You eat together, you fight together, you bleed together. You are not soldiers. You are not citizens. You are gladiators. You have no past, only the arena. The other fighters, the seasoned ones, let out a cheer. Or maybe a war cry. It echoes off the stone walls and rattles the morning air. You join in, hesitantly at first, then louder. Something ancient coils in your chest. Fear, pride, adrenaline. It's hard to tell. Later, you learn the nickname for that ceremony. Annulus fratrum, the brother's ring. You don't get to leave it. Not unless you die or earn a rudis. It's strange. You didn't ask for this, didn't choose it. But somehow, it feels realer than any family you've ever known. Afterward, the mood lightens. Gaius even smiles, rare as a solar eclipse. There's a small meal in the yard. Fresh bread, olives, goat cheese, some wine, only slightly watered. It's as close as you'll get to a celebration. Castor, the silent veteran, walks past and nods at your arm. Now you're one of us, he says. You didn't think it would mean much, but it does. There's a shift in how others look at you now. Less like you're a trainee, more like you're someone who might actually survive. Quirky tidbit, Ancient graffiti found in Pompeii included doodles of gladiator names, complete with symbols beside them, palms for victories, stars for popularity. Some were worshipped like rock stars, others faded into dusty walls, forgotten as quickly as they fell. You wonder what your symbol would be. Maybe a foot with wings. You do dodge well. That afternoon, training resumes. But there's more laughter, more ribbing. You catch Tiro trying to balance a helmet on his elbow while singing a lewd marching song. He almost pulls it off. Drusa shares dried figs with a few of the newer women, then winks at you from across the yard. "Congratulations, brother," she says, lifting her water cup. "Now you're officially allowed to die with honour." You raise yours in return. "Or live with sass," she snorts. "Try that line in front of the Emperor. See how long you last." You wonder sometimes about this strange sense of belonging. How can you feel kinship with people you might one day kill? But it's there, undeniable. The ludus breaks you, moulds you, then binds you to the others, like clay fired in the same kiln. Evenings in the barracks start to shift. Fewer silent stares, more stories. Tiro talks about baking, about the smell of rising dough and the floured countertop, where he used to sneak bites of pastry dough. Bassus reveals he has a son somewhere, though he doesn't know where. Wolfram hums a lullaby you swear is older than Rome itself. There's an unspoken rule here. What's shared at night stays in the dark. No teasing, no betrayal. The day is for violence. The night is for remembering who you were. Historians still argue whether this sense of gladiator brotherhood was real or just romanticised by later writers. But the archaeological evidence, inscriptions, tombs, even shared burial plots, suggests something powerful bound these men and women together. You feel it now, more than ever. In the early morning you catch Castor at the edge of the yard, looking up at the sky. He's never said much, but today he speaks first. "Before I was a gladiator," he says, "I was a centurion, fought across Gaul, commanded men." You blink. "Why do you end up here?" He shrugs. "Politics. Lost the wrong argument. Now I fight for cheers instead of Rome." He looks down at the dirt. "But out there," he points to the open yard, "they cheer louder. And sometimes that's enough." You don't say anything. Just stand beside him until the sun rises over the walls. You both return to the barracks, in silence. Back in your bunk, you trace the tattoo on your arm. The ink is still sore, but it feels earned. You're no longer just a body in the sand. You're part of something now. Something bloody, something loud, something ancient, and it has your name. The first time you step into the arena for a real match, you don't feel brave. You feel hollow, like your nerves went ahead of you to scout the place and forgot to bring the rest of you along. You've trained for this moment. You've sweat, bled, sparred, cursed, prayed, and eaten more barley than you care to remember. But nothing prepares you for the sound. The second the gates creak open and the sun floods the passage, it hits you, waves of noise, layered like thunder over a sea of voices. The cheers aren't for you specifically, not yet. You're just the next act in a bloody lineup. But the crowd is hungry, and you're what's on the menu. You march out in full gear, gladius in hand, scutum strapped tight, helmet casting narrow vision. The sand crunches underfoot, still red from the earlier bout. You pass by a team of slaves dragging a limp body off the field. The smear left behind says enough. Your opponent waits across the arena. He's tall, wrapped in light armour, net and trident in hand. A retiarius. Great. A nimble, annoyingly fast type, who probably hates shields as much as you hate running. You don't get to choose matchups. Gaius handles that. And sometimes the crowd demands variety. They want to see opposites clash. Sword versus net. Brute versus dancer. Turtle versus bird. This match isn't to the death. At least, it's not supposed to be. But the line between performance and execution can get blurry in the heat of sand and steel. The referee stands between you. Robes pristine, expression bored. He raises a hand, drops it, And just like that, the fight begins. The retiarius circles fast. You're slower, more methodical, keeping your shield angled, watching his feet, ignoring the taunts from row 6 about your cow legs. He flings the net. You duck. Barely. It snags your shoulder, but you twist, dragging the net aside with your shield before he can pull it taut. You lunge. Your gladius grazes his thigh. The crowd gasps. Blood means entertainment. Quirky tidbit? Gladiators were trained to bleed dramatically. There was even a favoured style. Stagger backward, clutch your chest, spin before collapsing. Theatrical flair was just as important as winning. You're not sure how dramatic your stumble is, but, judging by the cheer, you're doing okay. He recovers, spins the trident with flair. You block high, he jabs low. The point scrapes your calf just enough to sting. Your blood hits the sand. You don't have time to panic, only to press forward. You drive your shield into him, hard. He falls back. You don't let him breathe. A quick jab of the gladius and you score another cut, this time across his arm. He drops the net. You pause. He raises a hand, open, palm out, a gesture of surrender. The crowd reacts, some cheering, some booing. They want to kill, but also recognise a good match when they see one. You step back. The referee looks to the editor, the game's sponsor, seated high above in shaded comfort. This time, it's a local magistrate, fat and smug, holding out his hand, thumb sideways, a murmur through the stands, suspense. Then slowly, deliberately, he turns it up. Mercy! You lower your sword. The retiarius breathes out, nods in gratitude. He'll live to fight another day. So will you. Sort of. Because surviving a match doesn't mean you're fine. Once you're back beneath the arena, the medicus is waiting. He splashes your leg with vinegar, so strong it makes you scream like a kicked goat. Marcellus appears a moment later, wearing a rare smile. You didn't die. Impressive. He even pats your shoulder. Just once. Almost broke your spine, but still, it's practically a hug. Wolfram is there too. He holds up a crude wooden cup. To your first real fight, he says. You clink it with yours. The wine tastes better than usual. Or maybe it's the adrenaline. That evening, you're allowed a second helping of food. A barley and date cake, dry but sweet. You savour every bite. Tiro jokes that next time you win, maybe they'll let you eat sitting down. Even Drusa nods at you during evening drills. Good footwork, she says. You didn't trip once. Praise from her is rarer than clean laundry. Historians still debate how often mercy was granted in the arena. Some say the crowd's mood was everything. Others believe most matches didn't end in death. Gladiators were expensive after all. Records show that many fighters lived through multiple bouts, some even retiring as celebrities. You're not there yet. But for the first time, you believe it's possible. You survived 2 more matches over the next month, one against a fellow Mamillo, brutal, gritty, decided by a well-timed shield bash that left your opponent seeing stars. Another was a team match, you and Tiro versus 2 Thracians wielding curved blades. Tiro almost lost an ear. You both got out alive. The crowd starts to remember your name. Or your nickname, rather, Felix Fortis, lucky and strong. They chant it now, faintly, when you appear. Your bunk gets a better pillow. Your meals, a few more olives. A senator's wife sends you a rose. You dry it, tuck it into your belt. Not because you care about the fanfare, but because every small gesture reminds you that you exist beyond the sand. You're not just surviving anymore. You're beginning to rise. You're still sore. Every breath tugs at the healing cut on your ribs, and your right leg has developed a charming new limp that makes stairs your worst enemy. But you're upright, breathing, eating, which means you've done something most rookies don't. You survived, not just the arena, but the days after, the paranoia, the recovery, the internal game of, is that bruise shaped like a knife wound or a breakfast fig? Word spreads quickly through the ludus. Felix Fortis is no longer just a name scratched on the roster. It's a fighter people watch. Some nod respectfully when you pass. Others avoid eye contact, suddenly remembering they might one day be across from you in the arena. You're not famous, not yet, but you're something dangerously close to respected. With that respect comes status. Not Roman status, of course. You're still a slave in legal terms, a piece of property with a pulse. But inside these walls, status works differently. You now get called to private training with Marcellus once a week. He corrects the angle of your strikes, forces you to fight with your offhand, teaches you the subtle art of winning without killing, how to wound theatrically, pause dramatically, and bleed just the right amount. You want cheers, not silence, he grunts one morning. A quiet crowd is a bored crowd. A bored crowd is a dangerous crowd. He teaches you how to use the arena like a stage. Walk tall, keep your helmet tilted slightly upwards so the crowd can see your eyes. Time your kill strikes to coincide with drum beats, if possible. And if you must fall, do it big. Meanwhile, Gaius, ever the businessman, begins parading you like a prize rooster. He invites patrons to come watch your sparring matches, and your name starts popping up in whispered wagers. Historians believe Gladiator fame worked much like modern celebrity. The crowd chose favourites. Winning mattered, but so did style. Fighters became brands. You're becoming marketable. One morning, Gaius hands you a small token, a bronze pendant in the shape of a gladius. From a fan, he says, already moving on to lecture someone else for spilling barley on the ledger. Keep it, might bring luck. It's not your style, but you wear it anyway. Superstition runs deep in the ludus. Some fighters carry bone charms, others tuck tiny statues of gods into their boots. You've even seen one guy whisper to a pebble before every fight. Wolfram calls it ridiculous, then pats his belt pouch like it holds something sacred. You don't ask. Along with status comes distraction. You get more visitors now. Some are noblemen looking to sponsor a rising star. Some are women in silk, with fans that do more fluttering than cooling. One actually passes you a note written in perfume. It's hard to read through the scent-induced tears, but it's mostly poetry and innuendo. Tiro watches with delight. You're a heartthrob now, he laughs. But better make sure the Emperor doesn't notice. He gets jealous. You snort. I'm more worried about Bassus noticing. He hates poems. With fame comes perks, but also pressure. You're expected to perform, not just in the arena, but everywhere. How you eat, how you walk, how you respond when someone calls your name from across the yard. You are no longer just a fighter. You are a spectacle. And when you spar now, people stop to watch. You feel their eyes. Even Castor watches more closely. You wonder if he's evaluating you as a threat. There's a tension now between you and the others. Not animosity exactly, but something quieter. You're not just one of the pack anymore. You've taken a step up. That step has edges. Still, there are moments of levity. One night, a group of drunk aristocrats sends down a cake shaped like the Colosseum, with a tiny sugar figurine of you standing in the middle. It's hilariously wrong. Your helmet is too big, your gladius is shaped like a broom, and your face is carved into a constant frown. You all laugh until Tiro accidentally eats your foot. That night, you lie in your bunk with your sword resting beside you and think about what it means to be a known gladiator. You remember when you were just a name on a chalkboard, sweating and training, dodging net swings from a guy who smelled like goat. Now, you're someone people bet on. Quirky tidbit. Some Roman households kept little figurines of their favourite gladiators, like ancient action figures. Kids would play with them in the streets, reenacting battles. You might already be a toy in someone's courtyard. That realisation is strange, but it also makes you more determined, because the crowd may love you today, but they can just as easily forget you tomorrow. So you train harder. You memorise the timing of certain drum beats. You polish your armour just a little more. You try new flourishes with your gladius, nothing excessive, just enough to draw a few gasps when you land a hit. Marcellus notices. Getting flashy, are we? You shrug. Better to die memorable than forgettable. He actually grins. "Maybe you'll make it," he says. It's the closest thing to a compliment you've ever gotten from him. That night, the moonlight cuts across the yard, and the air smells like oil and iron. Somewhere a flute plays, not a melody you know, but soft, mournful, beautiful in its simplicity. You fall asleep wondering what your next match will bring. Not if you'll live or die, but if the crowd will cheer. Because now you're not just surviving the arena, you're learning how to own it. It starts with a whisper in the training yard. Felix's name is on the betting wall again. He's climbing the board. Gaius is charging double for a front row seat to his next match. You pretend not to hear it, but it follows you. Through meals, through drills, even through the night when you're lying on your back, staring at the beams above your bunk. Fame, you're learning, is a two-edged gladius. One edge cuts through fear. The other slices into your peace of mind. Because now that people know your name, they want something from it. The first sign comes in the form of a new tunic, finer cloth, dyed a deep red. Gaius presents it, like he's gifting you a crown. "You're bringing in coin," he says, patting your shoulder. The crowd chants for you. Even Senator Veturius asked for you by name. You don't like Veturius. Nobody does. He's the kind of man who claps with one hand and stabs with the other. But Gaius sees him as a patron, and a gladiator with a patron is a gladiator with influence, which is almost as valuable as armour that doesn't chafe. So you wear the red tunic. It fits but feels tight in strange places. You'd swear the cloth whispers, "Don't mess this up." Your next match is bigger, not just in scale but in presence. The arena's half full before you even arrive. The seats are packed with nobles, merchants, high-ranking soldiers, people who smell expensive and speak in that smooth, condescending Roman rhythm. You pace behind the gate, armour freshly polished, nerves bouncing inside your skull like trapped bees. Wolfram claps your shoulder. "Look sharp. There's a lot of silver being bet on you today." You raise an eyebrow. "From you?" He grins. "God's number, I bet on the other guy. Keeps the odds spicy." That's comforting. Then come the fan gifts. After the match, an exhausting 3-opponent victory that left you with a cracked rib and a blackened eye. You return to the barracks to find a scroll on your mat. The wax seal is gold. Inside, a poem. Possibly the worst poem you've ever read. Something about your sword being a comet of valour and your eyes like twin olives of war. But the wax seal, that's a senator's crest. Important people are watching. Tiro steals it later to use as fire starter. You don't argue. The attention doesn't stop. More scrolls, flowers, a small ivory comb. One woman sends you a miniature wooden gladius carved with your name. You give it to a younger recruit who lost a finger during training. He smiles like you handed him Jupiter's lightning bolt, but even good attention curdles. You start noticing the shift, how some fighters won't make eye contact, how others spar with you harder than necessary, swinging with an edge just sharp enough to leave a mark. It's not jealousy, it's calculation. If they're going to be matched with you one day, they want to know how hard they'll have to fight, and whether they'll live through it. Drusa sums it up during a break between drills. "You've got a target on your back," she says, spitting sweat. "The crowd loves you. That's great, until they get bored, or until someone decides they want the spotlight more." She's not wrong. One evening Caster corners you in the yard, not angrily, not threateningly. But his voice is low, calm. "Be careful. Fame makes you forget pain, until it doesn't." He taps the side of your head gently, then walks off. You begin to notice the patrons too. They don't just bet, they invest. Senator Veturius sends one of his slaves with a message. If you win your next match, he'll sponsor your armour, custom made. But it comes with a warning. Lose poorly, and I'll invest elsewhere. It's hard to sleep after that. Historians still debate how much influence wealthy patrons had over individual gladiators. Some say it was cosmetic, names on betting slips, parties after victories. Others argue that a patron could make or break a fighter's career, even manipulate matchups from behind the scenes. You don't need historians, you're living it. And it gets worse. Gaius starts offering appearances, short shows at banquets or private estates. You wear armour, pose for guests, sometimes perform mock duels for applause and tossed fruit. You hate it. It feels cheap, like a lion being taught to balance on a ball, but the coin keeps flowing. And as long as Gaius is profiting, your training hours stretch longer, your meals improve, your name climbs. You find yourself talking less, laughing less. Even Tiro notices. "Hey Fortis, when did your grin retire?" You shrug. "Somewhere between fan mail and the senator who wants to own me." "Cheer up," he says. "At least no one's asked you to endorse sandal polish. Yet." But his tone is softer than usual. You do your best to hold on to the good. You still share a bench with Wolfram during evening drills. You still slip your extra olives to Bassus when he's too bruised to walk to the food line. You still light a candle, secretly, for the friend you lost last week, a young recruit named Vibius, who never made it past his first real match. He wasn't famous, he was just one of you. You remember the way he held his shield, too high, always blocking his own eyes. You remember trying to correct him. He'd nod and forget within minutes. Now his bunk is empty. You trace your name carved into the foot of your own mat, Felix Fortis, and you wonder what it's worth if it becomes the only thing people remember. There's something unsettling about stepping into a boat while wearing armour, especially when the boat is on wheels, sitting in the middle of a dry arena, and the sea beneath you is a layer of water barely ankle deep and quickly turning into brownish soup. Welcome to a Naumachia, a staged naval battle. You've been drafted for the morning show, one of the specialty matches designed to thrill the crowd and make the Emperor look like a generous genius. "They're flooding the arena?" you ask Martellus. He nods, not looking up from the roll of wax tablets he's studying. "Half flood, theatre, just enough to make you trip and feel ridiculous." You don't even know where to start. Turns out the Colosseum has hidden channels and plumbing systems under the arena floor. When properly arranged, usually by hundreds of slaves and 1,000 buckets, it can simulate a mini lake. Not enough to swim in, but enough to cause dramatic splashes when someone gets hit with a trident. And that's today's assignment, aquatic spectacle. You're fitted into slightly modified gear, lighter armour to avoid drowning, a crested helmet for flair, and a backup dagger tied to your thigh in case your ship goes down. You raise an eyebrow at the phrase. "It's on wheels, Marcellus," he just shrugs. "Still counts. You and 8 others are divided into 2 teams, blue sails and red sails. You're on the reds. You're handed a shield painted with a poorly drawn sea serpent and told you're now a Tyrrhenian pirate. Fantastic. Historians still debate how realistic these naval reenactments were. Some sources say they flooded entire amphitheatres, others believe it was just stage drama. Lots of yelling, water splashing, and probably some guy in a dolphin costume. You're leaning toward the latter, because 10 minutes later, you're standing in ankle-deep water with a rubber fish tied to your belt, fending off a guy with a harpoon who clearly missed his calling as a stage actor. But the crowd loves it. They cheer when you lurch forward, shield raised, leaping from your boat to engage the enemy on his. The wheels creak, the boards tilt, and someone slips and lands face first in the water with a spectacular splash that earns a laugh so loud you almost drop your sword. You parry, jab, dodge, and spin. Your foot skids on the wet planks and you nearly fall, but then somehow you pivot into a dramatic roll, rise to your knees, and plunge your gladius into the space beside your opponent's thigh. Close enough for drama, not enough for damage. The crowd erupts. You don't know if it's the move or the fish on your belt flopping with the momentum. Either way, you take the win. Tiro, on your team, waves dramatically with both arms and shouts, "All hail the sea serpent of doom," before being immediately stabbed and flopping into the water with a fake death groan. He floats face up, arms wide. "Tell my..." Goats, I love them. You can't help but laugh. Eventually the battle ends. Your team wins. The crowd is pleased. The emperor, or at least his nephew standing in for him, raises his wine cup. You're ordered to bow. The sun reflects off the water, and for a brief moment, it actually feels like theatre. Later, you return to the ludus dripping wet and smelling like wet goat. You're lucky it wasn't real water combat, Wolfram says. I heard they once used actual ships at Lake Fucine. Thousands of men. Real blood. You raise an eyebrow. Was that an exaggeration? He shrugs. Probably, but Rome does love to bleed money on a spectacle. The next week brings another specialty match, a venatio, a wild beast hunt. This time, you're not fighting people. You're fighting animals. And not just any animals. The arena has been transformed into a fake forest, complete with trees, rocks, and even paper birds tied to strings. It's ridiculous, but also dangerous, because the paper birds might be fake, but the bear hiding behind a wooden shrub. Very, very real. You're paired with Drusa. She's assigned the spear. You're given a short javelin and a gladius. Your instructions are simple. Survive. You wait behind a concealed panel, breathing slowly, trying to ignore the deep, rumbling growls echoing from the next pen over. The crowd cheers as the gates open. You step out into the faux wilderness, boots sinking slightly into the damp dirt. And then it happens. A cage creaks open. The bear, a massive hairy wall of claws and muscle, stomps into view, shaking its head like it owns the place. You try not to freeze. Drusa mutters, I'll get its attention. You flank. What if it notices both of us? She grins. Then we're evenly chewed. The bear charges. Drusa feints left. You dash right, javelin in hand, praying to every god you remember. You manage to land a jab to its flank. Not deep, but enough to make it roar. The crowd is ecstatic. You dodge, roll, get pawed in the ribs hard enough to knock the breath from your lungs. Drusa lands a hit on its leg. The bear stumbles. You move in. 2 fast slashes, coordinated, brutal. Eventually, the beast collapses. Not dead. Sedated by hidden handlers once it's stunned. You and Drusa stand panting, armour shredded, faces scratched. The crowd loses its collective mind. Quirky tidbit. Rome imported exotic animals from across the empire for these games. Lions, tigers, ostriches, even giraffes. Some were meant for shows, some were meant to kill. Others were paraded just to remind everyone how big Rome's borders stretched. You get 3 stitches and a hero's welcome. The next morning someone carves a crude image into the barracks wall. You and Drusa, standing over a bear, both holding forks. Beneath it, the words, next time, dinner. Even the arena's absurdity can't keep you from grinning. But now you know, not all fights are clean, not all matches are man-to-man. And sometimes the wildest battles don't wear armour. You can usually tell when someone's been injured in a real fight. Not because of the blood or the bruises, that's standard fare. No, you can tell because of the silence that follows. Like right now, you're sitting on a stone bench in the infirmary, watching the medicus pull a barbed spear tip from Tiro's thigh with a pair of tongs that look suspiciously like fireplace tools. He doesn't scream. He just clenches his jaw, sweat pouring down his face like rain off a roof. The medicus, old, bald, smells like herbs and fermented sadness, hums to himself as he works. His hands are steady. The man might not blink for minutes at a time, but he's got precision. When the tip finally comes free with a wet schlick, the medicus drops it into a tin bowl where it lands with a satisfying clink. No major damage, he says. Just avoid running for a week, or ever again. Your choice. Tiro gives you a sideways glance. Tell the crowd they should have cheered louder. You snort, but deep down, you're not laughing. Because you know what's next. You've seen it before. Healing here is never a guarantee. They say gladiators were like prized horses. Well fed, well trained, and patched up just enough to run again. But the truth is messier. If you can walk, you're expected to train. If you can swing a sword, you're expected to fight. Rest? That's a luxury. You've had your own share of wounds, cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder, more cuts than you can count. Some you still feel when the weather shifts. One in particular, on your side, just below the ribs, still aches like a phantom tooth. The medicus treated it with terebinth resin, honey, and prayers to Apollo. Only one of those things actually helped. Quirky historical note: Roman Medici believed spiderwebs helped clot wounds. So yes, at one point, you had spider silk pressed into a cut while the medicus muttered something about divine binding. It worked, probably, or maybe you just healed despite it. The worst part of injury, though, isn't the pain, it's the downtime. Being benched means being forgotten. Out of the yard, out of the arena, out of the public eye. You fade, the chants get softer, your name slips off the betting walls, and in a place where survival depends on relevance, invisibility is dangerous. You remember Galen. Big guy, huge scar across his back, once defeated 3 opponents in a single bout. He sprained his knee in a bad landing, spent 2 weeks in bed. By the time he was back on his feet, no one remembered his name. Gaius sold him to a lesser ludus. He didn't last long. So when you're hurt, you don't linger. You get back up, even if it means wrapping your sword hand with linen until it looks like a breakfast pastry. One afternoon, you return from a match with a shoulder wound, clean but deep. The medicus tuts, pours wine on it, the cheap kind of course, and then says something that sticks with you. Pain is honest, he says. It tells you what still works. You nod, though you don't fully understand it until the next week, when you're sparring with Custer and your shoulder screams at every block. But it doesn't give out. You're still here, still fighting, still working. And the medicus is right. The pain reminds you that you're alive. You see others break. Not just bones, but minds. There's a man named Lupercus who once had the fastest hands in the ludus. After a particularly rough lost 3 fingers in a team match, he stopped talking. Just sat in the yard, sharpening a spoon that no one dared take from him. Marcellus eventually reassigned him to kitchen duty, not out of mercy, but because a silent, spoon-wielding man unnerved the new recruits. Drusa dislocated her elbow in a match. She popped it back in herself. No theatrics, no fuss, just grit and a grimace. You asked her about it later. She shrugged. You either get used to the pain or the pain gets used to you. Historians still argue how advanced gladiator medical care truly was. Some claim they received the best care of any slaves. Others think it depended entirely on the Lanista's priorities. Either way, you've seen both ends of the scale. Careful stitching and careless amputations, expert treatment and bite this stick medicine. You learn tricks to stay upright, to hide a limp, to favour one side without making it obvious. You rub vinegar on sore muscles, sleep with your bad arm over your chest, use the edge of your shield to massage a cramped calf. You hide your injuries, not from the medicus, but from Gaius. If he thinks you're weakening, he might sell you. Or worse, match you against someone meant to end you. Injury is weakness. And weakness is opportunity for someone else. But not all wounds are visible. There are days when you wake up with your jaw clenched so tight it aches. Nights when the echoes of the crowd keep you from sleeping. You start to understand why Castor walks alone, why Wolfram hums the same melody every night, why Drusa talks to her weapons like old friends. It's not superstition, it's survival. So you sharpen your blade with slow methodical strokes. You clean your armour even when it's already clean. You practice footwork until your legs tremble, because the only cure for fear, for pain, for fading into the dust is motion. Keep moving, keep fighting, keep mattering. One evening, the medicus stops you after treating a torn knuckle. He binds it tightly, ties it off, and nods. You're healing well, he says. You look at him. Good. I've still got fights to win. He smiles, just a little. Of course you do. You walk back to the barracks, hand throbbing in rhythm with your heartbeat. And for the first time in days, it feels like a song. It begins with a stare. Not just any stare. A long, measured, I know what you did, and I plan to hit you for it kind of stare. It comes from Bassus during morning drills. You're both mid-spar when he pauses, just a beat too long, his shield raised, his eyes burning behind his helmet. You blink. You good? He doesn't answer. He just swings harder than he ever has. You parry in time, but your forearm vibrates from the force. And you know, it's begun. Vendetta, rivalries among gladiators aren't new. They simmer beneath the surface like underground fires, smouldering in shared dorms during mealtimes across the sand pit. Most die out before they erupt, but sometimes a spark catches. And when it does, you better hope you're the one with the better footwork. You've fought alongside Bassus in drills, you've eaten next to him, but you beat him in the betting odds last month. You stole the crowd's attention in a team match. You were given a new shield when his was still bent. And now, you're the problem. Wolfram warns you during lunch, chewing slowly on a fig that looks like it's seen better centuries. Watch your back, he mutters. Bassus talks in his sleep. Keeps saying your name. You blink. In a threatening way. Doesn't sound like a lullaby. It escalates fast. You start noticing little things. Extra hard hits during drills. Sand mysteriously poured into your helmet. A faint slice across your practice gladius that wasn't there yesterday. Petty but precise. Then comes the real problem. The matchup list. You spot it after evening training, posted on the wooden board by the armory. Next to your name, Bassus. Solo bout. Main event. 3 days from now. You lock eyes across the yard. He's already watching. He nods. No smile. No words. Just the nod of a man who's been waiting for permission. Historically, vendettas weren't just tolerated in gladiator schools, they were practically encouraged. Lannistae like Gaius knew that personal grudges made for better fights. Nothing sells like blood with a backstory. You spend the next days training with Drusa and Castor. Both offer advice without asking what you did to earn Bassus's wrath. Lower your stance when he charges, Castor says. He leads with his right shoulder, counter with a step back and upward strike. Drusa just shrugs. Or kick him in the knee. Depends on your mood. Wolfram watches from the wall, arms crossed. Try not to die. I've got 3 denarii on you. Would be awkward to collect if you're in pieces. The night before the fight, the barracks are quiet. Even Tiro skips his usual humming. Someone has drawn a line in the sand near your bunk. A joke, maybe, or a prophecy. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, running through every moment you've sparred with Bassus. He's strong, heavy, not fast but brutal. Once he locks in, he doesn't let go. A boar in human form, but you're faster, smarter. And if you keep your head clear, you might stand a chance. Might. The next day, the arena is loud. Louder than it's been in weeks. Word spreads quickly about rivalries, especially ones with blood in the air. Your armour feels heavier. Not just from weight, but from pressure. You march into the sunlight, like a man walking into his own echo. The sand burns underfoot. The crowd roars. Bassus enters from the opposite gate, already rolling his shoulders like he plans to remove yours. You bow slightly. He doesn't. And then it begins. He charges. You sidestep. Barely. The edge of his shield scrapes your ribs as you spin away, planting your heel and striking high, but he blocks it with ease, grunting with something between focus and fury. You circle. He follows. He fakes left, then hammers your shield from above, cracking your wrist hard enough to numb your fingers. You grit your teeth and jab low, catching his thigh. The crowd cheers. He barely reacts. Then he swings. Wide, too wide. You duck, roll, and come up behind him. But before you can strike, he back kicks you straight in the gut. The air leaves your lungs. You stumble. Quirky fact, some gladiators developed signature moves. The crowd learned to recognise them. Cheered when they saw the build-up. Gasped at the impact. You don't have a signature move yet. But now might be a good time to improvise. Bassus rushes again. You plant your feet. This time, instead of dodging, you drop. Roll between his legs, pivot, and slam your shield into the back of his knee. He stumbles, you strike, fast, shallow, your gladius scoring across his shoulder blade, enough to draw blood, enough to prove you're not just surviving. He turns roaring, eyes wild, he swings, and you let him. You raise your shield, absorb the hit, and then counter low, slicing across his shin. He falls. Just for a moment, you raise your blade. The crowd screams, and then he raises his hand. Surrender. You hesitate. You could finish it. End him here. He'd do it to you, probably still wants to. But you look to the editor, seated in his shaded box, sipping from a golden cup. He gives the signal. Mercy. You lower your blade. Bassus growls from the dirt, bloodied but breathing. We're not done, he mutters. You nod once. Good. Back in the ludus, silence follows you. Gaius claps once as you pass. Well played. Could have been cleaner, but you gave them a show. Marcellus smirks. Don't get used to mercy. It's seasonal. Drusa just tosses you a rag. You've got sand in your hair. Also, good work. Later, alone, you find a new carving on the barracks wall. A crude image of two gladiators crossing blades. Beneath it, someone's scratched. Not enemies, not friends, just Rome. You sleep that night with your bruised ribs, your throbbing wrist, and your unbeaten name. And somewhere nearby, Bassus sleeps too, plotting no doubt, but you welcome it. Because rivalries don't just keep you sharp, they keep you human. There's a door at the back of the ludus you're not supposed to enter. Thick wood, iron-bound, always locked. Beyond it, whispers. Occasional laughter. The sound of dice hitting stone. Conversations that start with names you recognise. Senators, generals. And end with phrases like, double the payout if he loses in the third strike. Welcome to the real arena. Not the one filled with sand and swords. The one filled with money, politics, and people who'll never bleed a drop, but still decide who does. One afternoon, Gaius pulls you aside. You've done well, Felix. They're noticing you. You blink. They? He smiles. The ones who matter. Before you can ask what that means, he gestures for you to follow. Not into the armory, not to the barracks, to the door. It creaks open to reveal a world apart. A dim chamber lit with oil lamps and coloured glass. Cushioned benches, silver trays with dates, cheeses, and something that smells too sweet to trust. And seated within, men in fine robes, rings on every finger, voices soft and sharp. You recognise one, Senator Veturius, the man who bet on your last match, the man whose name makes servants tremble. He smiles like a crocodile. Ah, Fortis, come sit. Let's talk about your future. You stand there, still wearing dust from morning drills, sweat soaking into your tunic, and realise this is not a request. You sit. What follows is not a conversation. It's a transaction. They talk about arranging your next fight, about what kind of match the crowd will appreciate, about who should win, about how long it should take. You're not part of the strategy. You're the piece being moved across the board. And that's when it clicks. The arena is theatre, but the real drama happens here, behind closed doors, in smoky rooms, over goblets of wine. Think of it as guidance, Veturius says, swirling his drink. Give them a good show, but maybe stretch it out. Let them feel the tension. If you win, win slow. He reaches across the table, places something in your palm. A gold coin. Heavy. Keep your name on their lips, and I'll keep mine on the match ledger. You return to your bunk later, staring at the coin. It shines. It mocks. This, too, is part of the job. Historians argue endlessly about the level of corruption in the games. Some claim results were rigged. Others insist everything was earned, clean and brutal. The truth? Somewhere in between. Outcomes weren't always fixed, but outcomes were influenced. Spectacle over spontaneity. Drama over justice. You don't tell anyone about the coin, but you start noticing things. Like how some matches end too cleanly, or how certain fighters get easier draws. or how the crowd seems to guess outcomes a little too well. One evening, Tiro corners you by the bath. You met them, didn't you? The door crew. You don't answer. He grins anyway. Don't worry, I won't. Tell. Just remember, fame makes you valuable, but it also makes you owned. And he walks off whistling a tune that doesn't sound very cheerful. You start seeing the strings everywhere. Gaius speaks more often in riddles. Martellus whispers names before matches with a glance that means more than words. You get invited to another private room. This one with softer cushions and a curtain instead of a door. There's a woman there, young, sharp eyes, high birth. She asks you about your scars like they're decorations. She runs a finger down one and says, "It's beautiful. You should wear less armour." You smile, but inside your thoughts are pacing. Because this is exposure, influence, a reminder. Even your body is public property. Later that night, Drusa finds you at the well, washing blood from your gear. "You've got that look," she says, "the one that means you've seen behind the curtain." You raise an eyebrow. "You knew?" She snorts. "Everyone knows. We just don't say it out loud. Makes it real." You nod. "What do we do?" Drusa shrugs. "You fight. You win. You give them what they want. And if we don't," she looks you in the eye, "then they find someone who will." You think of Castor, quiet as ever. You remember how he stepped away from the wall the day after your last big match, wiping his blade clean. Not a word spoken. He's seen the curtain too, maybe stepped behind it more times than you've dared. Quirky tidbit. Some emperors, like Commodus, stepped into the arena themselves, pretending to be gladiators. They fought rigged matches, demanded applause, and were showered in praise for fights, as fake as their humility. The games were power displays, not just sport. And right now, you're part of that power play. You begin rehearsing moves at night, timing gestures with beats in the crowd's rhythm. Testing dramatic pauses, you train your face to flinch less, smile more, to perform. You hate it, but it keeps you alive. It keeps your name climbing. One afternoon, Gaius hands you a new scroll. It's a poem again. Same terrible writing, same scent. But this time, it ends with, "If you bleed too quickly, the chorus will miss your final note." You fold it slowly, slide it into the fire, and go sharpen your sword. You know something's different the moment she walks into the yard. Not because of how she looks, though she's taller than most, with thick braids tied back in a no-nonsense coil, and arms that could knock over a goat with a flick. Not because of how she moves, controlled, quiet, like a storm that hasn't decided whether it's here to rain or wreck. No, what stands out is how silent everything becomes around her. Every man in the yard pauses, Castor mid-lunge, Wolfram mid-joke, even Marcellus, who rarely gives anything more than a grunt, stares like someone just dropped a tiger in the middle of his sandpit. The woman steps forward, drops a canvas sack with a loud thunk, and says simply, "Where do I sleep?" Her name is Sabina. You learn that 2 minutes later when she knocks Tiro flat on his back during a handshake. To be fair, he did try to kiss her hand first. The other gladiatrices, yes, there are a few, nod at her. Not a welcome, more like a warning. Let's see what you're made of. You and Drusa watch from the shade. "She's tall, you say?" Drusa chuckles. "She's terrifying. I like her." Sabina joins the evening drills, and it's clear this isn't her first ludus. Her footwork is precise, her sword strikes clean, her shield work fierce. She doesn't talk much. She doesn't need to. You spar her 2 days later. She lands 3 blows before you blink and flips you onto your back without breaking a sweat. You hesitate, she says, offering a hand to pull you up. You take it. "I admire your generosity," she smirks. "Don't get used to it." Here's the thing they never told you when you first arrived at the ludus. Gladiatrices are rare, but real. Historians still argue about how often women fought in the arena. Some say they were novelties included in games for shock value. Others believe they had full matches, real stakes, and real reputations. You've now got first-hand evidence. Sabina isn't a sideshow. She's a storm in armour, and she's rising fast. Within days, her name shows up on the betting boards. Within weeks, she's featured in a tag team match alongside Drusa, 2 women fighting 2 Thracian men in a flashy, brutal skirmish that ends with Drusa tossing her opponent's shield into the crowd like a wedding bouquet. The crowd goes wild, not just for the spectacle, but for them. These women aren't novelties, they're warriors. Back at the ludus, there's a shift. The jokes stop, the stares soften, respect sets in, but not from everyone. You catch muttered insults from a few older gladiators. Should be washing clothes, not swinging swords. Rome's gone soft, one dares to whisper. Let her fight me. I'll knock the femininity out of her. She hears it and challenges him. His name's Remus, a veteran Mumio with arms like marble columns and a mouth that's never learned silence. They fight in the yard, no armour, practice blades. Gaius allows it, watching from a balcony with the casual interest of a man observing a storm he can't control, but finds very entertaining. The match doesn't last long. Remus swings wide. Sabina ducks, sidesteps, jabs and sweeps. He stumbles. She plants a foot on his chest and presses her blade to his throat. Femininity's still here, she says. You're welcome to try again tomorrow. Remus doesn't. After that, the mutters stop. You start training with Sabina more. She doesn't talk much, but she notices everything. Your foot alignment, your breathing, the way you blink before you faint. Stop doing that, she says one morning. It's giving you away. What blinking? She shrugs. Not blinking, telegraphing. You're showing your move before you make it. Learn to lie with your eyes. You try, it's harder than expected. Still, under her watchful eye and Drusa's occasional sarcastic coaching, you sharpen. A week later, you're scheduled for a trio match. 3 fighters versus 3. You're paired with Drusa and Sabina. The crowd eats it up. They call you Bellator Rosa, the warrior rose. You're still not sure who's the rose and who's the thorn, but you don't argue. The match is chaos. Steel on steel, shields clashing, bodies twisting. Sabina moves like a whip, lashing out from the edge of your formation, striking then vanishing behind cover. Drusa holds the centre, solid as a statue, daring anyone to break her line. You play the wolf, darting between them, disrupting rhythm, punishing hesitation. You win. Not easily, but convincingly. The roar from the crowd is deafening. Afterward, all 3 of you raise your weapons. The image gets etched in charcoal by a street artist. You see it later on a merchant's stall. 3 figures standing side by side under the sun. Captioned, the thorn, the flame, and the lucky one. You laugh because you know which one's you, and you're fine with that. Quirky tidbit. Female gladiators were eventually banned by Emperor Septimius Severus in 200 CE. Not because they were bad at fighting, but because they were too good, too disruptive, too unpredictable. Can't have the Empire's image messed up by women outshining the men, right? You watch Sabina climb the ranks, quietly, relentlessly, and even as you fight your own battles, you make a point to keep an eye on hers. Because in this world, respect is earned in blood and scars, but friendship, that's earned in silence and sweat and shields raised side by side. It starts with a rumour. You're walking past the kitchen when you hear it. 2 of the younger recruits whispering over a bucket of boiled lentils. Felix might be getting the rudies. You freeze. Not because you believe them. Not yet. But because that word, it hits you harder than any gladius ever could. Rudis. The smooth wooden sword, simple and unsharpened, carried not into battle, but out of it. It's freedom. Symbolic, sure, but also literal. A fighter who receives a rudis from a sponsor, an editor, or the emperor himself is officially done. Retired, respected, released. You've seen one before, once. An old Mamilio named Garus earned his after 20 matches. He cried when he held it. then vanished from the ludus before sunrise, like it had all been a dream. You never saw him again. You step into the yard, trying to act normal, but your mind's already spinning. Is it true? Would Gaius even allow it? You've won 12 matches, survived 21. The crowd knows your name. You've fought beasts, men, even sailed a chariot in a mock naval battle that nearly tipped over mid-round. You've earned your stripes, literally and figuratively. Still, you don't let yourself believe it. Not fully. Later that day, you're summoned to the balcony. Gaius stands there, arms crossed with a scroll in hand. His expression is unreadable. Classic Gaius. The editor of the next games has made a request, he says. You straighten. A request? He nods. A feature fight, 1-on-1. Final match of the day. Full crowd. Emperor's cousin will be watching. They want blood, they want story. You wait, he continues. If you win, the rudies is on the table. That's all he says. Then he turns and walks away. No celebration, no ceremony, just the possibility. You spend the next 2 days training like a man possessed. You drill every block, every feint, every counter. You spar with Castor, with Drusa, even with Sabina, who knocks you flat twice but nods in approval by the end. You want it, she says. Good. Want it harder. Tiro carves a tiny wooden sword and places it on your bunk. Practice accepting it, he says with a wink. Even Marcellus is different. He watches you more closely, gives corrections more sharply, and once, just once, he pulls you aside. You've come farther than most. You've earned it, but don't expect the crowd to hand it to you. They want drama. Give it to them. You nod, but deep down, you're terrified. Because it's not just about fighting anymore. It's about finishing. Historians still argue whether all Rudy's awards were legitimate or political theatre. Some fighters were too popular to keep. Others were rewarded for loyalty, not just survival. But the symbol mattered. It was Rome's way of saying, you've done enough. You've never wanted anything more. Match day arrives. You wake before dawn, heart thudding like a war drum. You eat. A quiet breakfast, just barley and figs. You rub oil on your arms, polish your gear until it gleams. The arena is louder than ever. The sun hangs low, casting golden light through the arches. The sand looks almost peaceful, like a beach untouched by footprints. It won't stay that way for long. Your opponent is named Vindex, a Thracian, fast, deadly, decorated. You've seen him fight. You've seen him win. This won't be a dance. It'll be a storm. You enter the arena to chants. Your name, loud, clear, real. Felix, Fortis, Felix. You close your eyes for a moment. Then you charge. The match is vicious. You trade strikes like thunderclaps. His curved blade against your gladius. His light footwork against your solid stance. He lands a hit. Your shoulder burns. You catch his knee. He stumbles. The crowd is electric. He rushes again. You spin. He swings wide. You slam your shield into his chest and drive your blade upward, halting just before his neck. He falls. The crowd explodes. And then silence. All eyes turn to the editor's box. A man in blue robes stands. He pauses, then lifts a wooden sword. The rudies. Your breath stops. A herald steps forward, holds it high, and begins the official chant. Felix Fortis, by the editor's hand, you are granted your freedom. The crowd has cheered. The gods have watched. Rome has chosen. You drop to one knee. The rudis is placed in your hands. It's simple, smooth, lighter than any weapon you've held, and heavier than anything you've ever carried. You stand slowly, holding it high. The roar is deafening. Back at the ludus, you're welcomed not as a fighter, but as a legend. The other gladiators clap you on the back. Drusa gives you a tired smile. Even Bassus nods with something that might be respect. Might. That night, Gaius hands you a parchment. Your papers, he says. You're free. Just like that. You lie in your bunk one last time, staring at the ceiling, rudies across your chest. Freedom tastes like iron, and figs and 1,000 bruises. And it's beautiful. The bunk is empty now. Yours, the one near the eastern wall, third from the brazier where the candle always burned too fast. Someone's already cleared it. New straw, fresh blanket, no name scratched into the frame. You're not supposed to be here anymore. You stand at the edge of the yard in civilian clothes, simple tunic, belt, sandals that don't reek of the arena, and watch as the day begins without you. The horn blows. The gates creak open. Martellus bellows his usual morning insult parade. Faster, you limping goats. That sand won't trample itself. You half expect him to call your name. Half expect your legs to move out of instinct. But they don't. Because you're no longer in the ranks. You're watching them. You're free. The rudies hangs from your belt like a badge. It doesn't shimmer or glow or part the seas when you walk past. But it gets looks, respectful nods, even fear. You're not property anymore. And yet, it doesn't feel finished. You're not sure what freedom is supposed to feel like. Lighter? Happier? Floatier? All you feel is disoriented. Gaius hands you a pouch of coins and a sealed document bearing the imperial stamp. Your proof, your protection. No one touches you now, he says, unless you ask them to. He grins. You don't. The next step is up to you. Most retired gladiators vanish. They find a village, a farm, a life far from sand and blood. Some open taverns, some train new recruits. A few get rich, become bodyguards, even celebrities. A lucky handful marry well. Others don't last. Not because of another blade, but because they don't know what to do without one. You walk the streets of Rome, Rudy's tucked close. You're not used to the noise anymore. The smells, the press of bodies that aren't sweating in armour. A merchant offers you a honeyed fig. You stare like he just handed you a live snake. You've forgotten how to live without surviving. It doesn't help that you still see it all. You pass a mosaic in a bathhouse. Two fighters clashing mid-match, the artist capturing the curve of the blade mid-swing. You catch your reflection in the water. For a moment, you look just like them. You walk past a group of children sparring with wooden sticks, shouting made-up names. One of them calls himself Felix. You don't know whether to smile or run. You visit the Colosseum one last time. Not from beneath, not through the service tunnels, but as a spectator. You sit high in the stone benches, where the air is thin and the blood doesn't reach. You watch as a young Mamillo faces off against a Retiarius. You can't help it. You shift your shoulders with every move, anticipate, flinch, react. Your hands twitch like they still hold a gladius. The Mamillo wins. Barely. He salutes the editor. The crowd cheers, then forgets, because there's always another match. Quirky historical footnote, retired gladiators were sometimes invited back for ceremonial. Fights, staged, gentle, symbolic. The crowd loved a comeback, but more often they faded. Their stories etched in stone, carved in wax tablets, or passed around over dinner like ghost stories. You walk back toward the ludus that evening. Just once more. Drusa spots you at the gate. Thought you were gone, she says, arms crossed, face unreadable. I thought so too, she nods toward the yard. They miss you. You know that, right? You shrug. Not for long. New names rise. Sure, but the old ones leave shadows. You don't go inside, you just stand there, watching the drills, listening to the clash of wood and barked orders. You realise it then. You're not supposed to forget. The point of freedom isn't to erase the past, it's to carry it differently. To hold the rudies not as a severed chain, but as a story. Back in your room, an actual room with a bed, not a bunk, you place the rudies above the doorway. A reminder. Not just of what you survived, but of who. Because not everyone makes it. You remember Vibius, the nervous kid with the too high shield. You remember Galen and his limp, Lupercus and his spoon, the Thracian twins, the woman who carved her name into her helmet and died before the match began, the bear, the fake ship, the mock sea. And you remember the sound, always the sound, of the crowd roaring your name. You were a ghost before this life. Now your story echoes through the stones. Tomorrow, you'll decide what to do. Maybe train others. Maybe leave Rome. Maybe sit beneath a fig tree and learn how to be still. But tonight, you close your eyes in a real bed. And for the first time in a long time, you don't dream of the arena, you just sleep. The sun rises slow over the rooftops of Rome, bathing the city in a soft gold that feels almost merciful. You wake to birds instead of boots, to silence instead of shouting. For a second, you forget where you are, and then you see it. The rudies, still there, still yours. You run your fingers over the smooth wood, still cool from the night. No blade, no edge, just the symbol, but it's enough. It's more than enough. You dress without armour. You still wear the tunic Gaius gave you that final morning. Rough linen, dyed a faded red, frayed slightly at the hem. It feels comfortable now, like a second skin that doesn't ask you to bleed in it. Today's the day you say goodbye. Not to the people. Most are gone, scattered, fighting their own matches or their own ghosts, but to the place, to the arena, to the sand. You walk alone, no fanfare, no chants, just the quiet rhythm of your sandals on cobblestone, your breath steady, your thoughts quiet. The Colosseum looms ahead, magnificent even in stillness. From the outside it looks unchanged, like it could last another 1,000 years without blinking. Inside, of course, it's a different story, because the ghosts walk here, and one of them is yours. You slip past the usual guards, former gladiators themselves, some you recognise, some who nod in quiet respect. You don't need a reason to be here. You are the reason, in a way. All of you were. You step into the arena from the west gate, the same one you used a dozen times before. The light pours in now, casting long shadows, and the sand is freshly raked. There's no match scheduled today, just the wind, just the space. You walk slowly across the floor, your boots stirring the dust. You pause in the centre, that centre, where cheers used to thunder in your ears so loud you forgot your name, where your gladius once dripped blood, and your breath came in bursts, and the only certainty was that one of you would fall. But now it's quiet. You kneel, not in prayer, not in pain, just in acknowledgement, because this place made you, and nearly unmade you, and gave you everything and took so much more. Historians still argue whether gladiators were heroes or victims, performers or prisoners. They were all of it, and more, living contradictions with swords and stage presence, sacrifices to a city that fed on spectacle. And somehow you made it through. You rise, brush the sand from your knees, and walk to the stands, not to sit, but to look. You see the bones beneath the marble. You see the trapdoors, the ropes, the pulleys. You see the places where lions once paced, where men once waited in the dark, whispering to gods they barely believed in. You think of the ones who didn't earn the rudies, and you carry them with you. The sun climbs higher. You turn to leave. As you pass the gate, a young trainee stands there, barely older than Tiro was when he arrived. He stares at you, wide-eyed. You're Felix, aren't you? You smile, just a little. I was. He nods, fumbles with his practice gladius. You notice the way he holds it, too stiff, too upright. Lower your grip, you say. Let your wrists breathe. You're not holding a flag. He tries it. The blade moves easier. He beams. Thanks. You walk away, heart lighter than it's been in years. You don't need to fight anymore. But that doesn't mean you're done. Yeah, the footsteps fade behind you as Rome stretches on, and the noise of the city softens into something more distant. The market stalls, the clatter of carts, the music, the shouting, all blend into the kind of hum that becomes background, like a memory half forgotten but never fully gone. Your Rudy swings gently at your side as you walk. It's not heavy, but it carries everything. Each step takes you farther from the sand, from the blood, from the noise of the crowds. And yet, you realize none of it ever really leaves. It lives in your bones now, in your breathing, in the way you watch the corners of every room you enter. And that's okay. You've lived in the shadows of great stone walls. You've fought under the gaze of thousands. You've felt steel kiss your skin and cheers shake your bones. But now you feel the sun on your face, warm and steady. You stop beneath a fig tree, not to fight, not to run, but just to sit. For the first time in ages, you sit because you can. Because there's no horn calling you to drills, no gate creaking open, no name being shouted, just wind and leaves, and the soft sound of your breath. You close your eyes, you rest your hands on your knees, and as the breeze brushes your cheek, you smile. Because you're not a gladiator anymore. You're something better, you're free, sweet dreams.